Do you remember the promises of 2023? When Microsoft spent $75 billion on Activision, they told us the acquisition was about fueling gaming innovation, and by bringing two heavyweights together to create new opportunities for innovation. Instead, they canceled their most ambitious and creative projects and shut down the studios behind them. They told us the acquisition would promote a competitive landscape that benefits players and game developers alike. Instead, the gaming division has been through 4 major rounds of layoffs in just 18 months, and Microsoft as a company has cut over 15,000 jobs in just the first half of 2025, 6,000 in May and another 9,000 in July. They told us the acquisition's goal was to bring more games to more people. Instead, they've canceled Perfect Dark, Everwild, and Blackbird, shrinking the pipeline of new exclusives for players. And they told us that the acquisition is a net positive for players and the gaming community as a whole. Instead, they're funding an $80 billion annual investment in AI, reallocating the gaming division's resources, showing us as gamers that soon, nothing will be an Xbox. Promises broken, studios closed, thousands out of work, and the games gone. Today, we'll flip through the pages of Microsoft's playbook, one they use time and again, make a massive pivot, cut deep, and reap the rewards. Because this isn't just about layoffs, it's a glimpse into the business of tech and what gets left behind in the race for the next big thing. And if we haven't met before, I'm Suk, an accountant with nowhere near a multi-billion-dollar budget to fund this deep dive. Let's go. Fresh off a year of record-breaking success, you'd think Microsoft will kick off its new fiscal year by celebrating with the very people who helped hit that milestone. Instead, they began with a storm of pink slips. On July 2nd, 9,000 employees were let go in a single day. But that day wasn't a standalone event. It was the largest in a series of cuts that had been happening for months, bringing the total for the first half of the year to over 15,000 people. And, like I mentioned earlier, if you worked in the gaming division, this was all too familiar. It was the 4th time in just 18 months they'd been through this. Publicly, the official explanation was exactly what you'd expect. Microsoft spoke of making necessary changes for success and increasing agility by having fewer managers, a convenient story that avoids the most important question: why? The answer isn't about saving a struggling company, it's about reshaping a successful one. Microsoft is cutting jobs to free up cash for its number one goal: complete and total leadership in the era of AI. To understand what's happening at Microsoft today, you have to realize that these layoffs are part of a playbook that CEO Satya Nadella has been running for over a decade. It's both a powerful and painful strategy for completely changing the company's direction. Looking back since 2014, the pattern becomes clear. First, Microsoft identifies a new corporate obsession. A decade ago, it was the cloud, and today, it's AI. Then they cut the parts of the business that don't fit the new vision and funnel all that money and talent into their new priority. The first time we saw this in action was right after Nadella took over in 2014. He inherited the company's failed acquisition of Nokia's phone business, and he immediately went to work. That July, he kicked off the biggest restructuring in Microsoft history at the time, announcing 18,000 job cuts. Publicly, Microsoft called it work simplification, but really, it was a decision to cut their losses and pivot. A year later, they finished the job, cutting another 7,800 jobs and taking a massive $7.6 billion impairment charge on the Nokia deal. And just as an aside here, an impairment is accounting jargon for when a company has to admit that something they bought is no longer worth what they paid for it. And in this case, Microsoft was officially stating that the Nokia business was essentially worthless to them. And with that, the Nokia disaster was finally off the books, clearing the path for Microsoft to focus everything on conquering the cloud. By 2017, that cloud strategy was working exactly as planned, but the sales teams were still built to sell old school, physical software. So Nadella ran the play again. In July 2017, another 3,000 to 4,000 jobs were cut, mostly in sales and marketing. This wasn't about fixing any mistakes, but rather a forward-looking move to aim the company's sales engine at Azure and Office 365. It proved Nadella was willing to disrupt even successful parts of the business to serve his main goal, and it paid off, dramatically accelerating Azure's growth. That brings us to the current era of layoffs, which began in early 2023. This is the next evolution of the playbook, but this time it's happening faster and more frequently, showing just how urgently Microsoft is pivoting to AI. It started with 10,000 jobs in early 2023. Then throughout 2024, the cuts were mostly focused on the gaming division as they absorbed the Activision purchase, closing studios like Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks. But 2025 is when the pattern accelerated dramatically, with over 15,000 jobs cut across the entire company in just a few months. And while the gaming layoffs captured the headlines, they were just the most visible part of a much bigger story. Behind the scenes, Microsoft was quietly overhauling its entire sales division. They began replacing traditional salespeople with a new kind of technical expert, which Microsoft called a solutions engineer. Their job wasn't just to sell a product, but to sell clients a future built on Microsoft's AI. To support this direction, entire sales departments were merged and refocused on AI and the cloud. Now, the changes in the sales department show how Microsoft is building for its AI future, but the story of the gaming division shows what they're willing to sacrifice to get there. The Initiative, a studio founded to build blockbuster exclusives, was shut down entirely. King, the mobile powerhouse behind Candy Crush, lost around 200 people. The ZeniMax family saw widespread cuts and no franchise was safe, with teams behind Call of Duty, Forza, and Halo all being impacted. Beyond the jobs, this restructuring also created a project graveyard. The most shocking casualty was the Perfect Dark reboot. Following that up was Everwild, the ambitious new title from Rare. The decision to shelve two of their most ambitious upcoming games sends a clear message that Microsoft is retreating from the kind of expensive, high-risk development that once was their signature. In an internal memo, Xbox chief Phil Spencer acknowledged the contradiction of it all, writing, "I recognize that these changes come at a time when we have more players, games, and gaming hours than ever before." That single sentence says it all. It highlights the massive disconnect between the success Xbox has seen and the new financial reality being forced from above. It proves that for Microsoft today, even record-breaking player engagement is secondary to their bottom line. So with all the chaos this creates and the bad press they get, why do they keep running the same play? The simple and maybe tough to hear answer is that it works. From a money-making standpoint, it's been a huge win. Wall Street loves it when Microsoft is decisive, cuts its losses, and bets big on what's next. Take the 2014 layoffs, for instance. When they announced that huge 18,000 person layoff, the stock didn't just hold steady, it actually soared to a new high for the year. Once they finally ditched the whole Nokia phone disaster, their stock went on an absolute tear, growing nearly 600%. And the AI pivot we're seeing now, it's the same. Even with all the drama and backlash we're seeing and hearing, the stock is up a massive 150% over the last 5 years. And the financial results from each pivot shows us much of the same success. After the Nokia cuts, their profits took a big hit because of that $7.6 billion write-off, but that move let them focus everything on the cloud, and pretty soon, their Azure revenue was exploding. The sales team shakeup in 2017 paid off even faster. Right after those layoffs, Azure's growth shot up 90% in just one quarter. Which brings us to today's AI pivot. This one's a little different because the company is making more money than ever. They just had a record $245 billion year. So again, these cuts aren't because they're in trouble, it's a choice. They're choosing to fund their huge AI investment by making cuts elsewhere to keep profits high. It's a move that sends a clear message to Wall Street. Don't worry, even after you spend billions on AI, we'll keep making you money. But this financial success comes at a steep and very human cost. While the stock market is cheering, inside Microsoft is a whole different story. These constant rolling layoffs are creating what employees have called a culture of ambient dread. And that anxiety is just made worse because communication has totally broken down, with many employees now finding out about layoffs from the news before they hear a single word from their own managers. This creates a huge disconnect, especially when the company is making record profits. It's a really confusing and demoralizing message. The company's doing better than ever, but your job has never been less safe. It's led to this powerful feeling that employees aren't really people anymore, but just numbers on a spreadsheet. As one anonymous employee wrote, "We're not family, we're cost centers." That feeling is backed up by who's actually being let go. It's not just low performers. We're hearing consistent reports that a lot of the laid off workers were actually considered high performers, who just got good reviews. Even respected veterans with decades of experience were let go, which sends a clear signal that loyalty and experience won't protect you at Microsoft. So what's the takeaway for people inside Microsoft? It seems like being great at your job isn't enough anymore. All that really matters now is whether your job aligns with the company's main strategy, which is all in on AI. This new reality could lead to a serious brain drain where talented people in the very divisions that are making all the money decide to just leave. It's a risky strategy that feels a lot like starving the golden goose to feed the next big thing. And what does this all mean for the future? Well, it's pretty clear these layoffs aren't just random. They're big, calculated moves in a very high-stakes game. Microsoft is aggressively trying to set itself up to be the king of AI, and these job cuts are how they're going to pay for it. This leaves the company in a weird spot, where on one hand, there's a huge opportunity in AI, but on the other hand, their strategy is putting their successful, established businesses and their own company culture at risk. And no division illustrates this high-stakes gamble better than Xbox. The deep cuts there raise a huge question mark about its future. All these changes have analysts talking, and there are basically two main theories about what could happen next. The first, and maybe most likely, is the consolidation scenario. That's where the Xbox console as we know it gets slowly whittled down until it's just another part of the Windows OS. We're already seeing signs of this, right? There's a bigger focus on PC Game Pass and even Xbox branded hardware that runs on Windows, like the Asus ROG Ally. In this future, we might not even get a new Xbox console. Instead, you might see a special Microsoft branded gaming PC for people who are already all in on the Xbox world. The second path is that Microsoft just gets out of the console making business altogether and goes all in on being a publisher. The cuts to their own game development studios and the fact that they don't seem to care as much about console exclusives anymore could be a sign that they're moving to a leaner business model. One where they just continue to focus on getting Game Pass and big names like Forza and, dare I say, Halo onto every screen possible. And yes, that includes the PlayStation. The main problem with this everywhere at once strategy is that Xbox could end up becoming nowhere in particular, losing its identity because the bosses are more focused on short-term profits. And you can bet that focus on profit is directly tied to the massive spending spree Microsoft is on to build its AI empire. As long as they're dropping around $80 billion a year on that goal, the pressure to cut costs everywhere else is going to stay high. Analysts are predicting that we could see big annual layoffs of 10,000 people or more for the next few years as Microsoft tries to keep its profits looking good for investors. But this whole strategy comes with a huge risk, just like I mentioned before, a brain drain. Let's think about it for a second. If you're a super talented engineer or marketer in a division like Windows or Office, and you see that your job isn't safe anymore, no matter how well you do, you're probably going to go start looking for a new one. This could seriously weaken the very parts of the company that are making all the money to pay for this AI pivot in the first place. Finally, what's the ultimate lesson from Microsoft's playbook? It's that in today's tech world, even for a company at the height of its power, success in one area is no guarantee of security. It's a constant, ruthless search for the next big thing. And for the people who build the products we love, and for the customers who support them, the question is no longer what have you done for us lately, but what can you do to drive the next big thing? Because as we've seen, everything else is subject to sacrifice. Thanks for digging into the playbook with me on this one. If you want to see more deep dives into the strategy shaping the games we play, make sure you're subscribed. And if you appreciate this kind of analysis, a like on the video lets me know. What do you think Microsoft's next play will be? I'd love to hear your take on this or anything else we discussed today in the comments below. And as always, play more, pay less. See you on the next one.